Welcome to the Burning Eyes Tech channel, guys, and welcome to episode 3 of the Server 2019 series. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the different server editions we have, hardware requirements, and deployment methods. So that's not the only things we're going to be taking a look at. So if you have a look at this list that we have here, that's actually all the topics we're going to be discussing in this particular episode. The first being the different Server 2019 editions, second being hardware requirements for Windows Server 2019, third being overview of deployment options, fourth being deployment accelerators, servicing channels for Windows Server, licensing and activation modules for Windows Server, and lastly, what's new in Server 2019. So with all that being said, let's dive in. Windows Server 2019 editions. Well guys, at the time of the making of this video, Windows Server 2019 is currently the latest version of server available. May or may not be, depending on when you actually watch this video. It's been generally available since October 2018 and is available in 4 editions. When you look at the different versions available, you'll see that their names imply that they're actually designed for organizations of different sizes. These organizations obviously each have different virtualization and data center requirements. And if we have a look at the first edition, which is also the cheapest one out of the lot, it is Windows Server Essentials. It's perfectly suited for the needs of small infrastructure environments. This edition is designed for small companies with up to 25 users and up to 50 devices. Sounds like a lot, but it's actually very small. It's worth noting that Microsoft encourages its users to move beyond Windows Server Essentials and instead move to Microsoft 365. This solution is way better suited for small business customers. Microsoft 365 also offers new functionality for data storage, sharing, protection, and so on. Windows Server Essentials nevertheless has enough features to satisfy the needs of a small infrastructure environment. The 2019 Essentials Edition also makes it possible to integrate with Azure Virtual Network for those of you that's going to be using Azure Virtual Network. One of the things that sets it apart from Server 2016 edition, though, is the experience role functionality has unfortunately been removed. Now, the second edition on our list being Windows Server Standard, the Standard Edition is designed for physical or minimally virtualized environments, so there might be some virtualization, but it's going to be minimal. As for the maximum number of users, it is based on your CALs, being client access license requirements. Generally speaking, the Standard Edition offers the core Windows Server functionality, including but not limited to the functionality of Windows Server Essentials. So it's like Essentials, but it's just a notch higher. Obviously now I can go do a little bit of virtualization, a little bit of extra, but it's not much better than the Essentials version. Windows Server Standard is a nice choice if you want to run something like a file server or domain controller at a branch office perhaps. Now the third server edition on the list is this bad boy, Data Center Edition. This is the most expensive one out of the bunch, but obviously also has the most functionality out of the bunch. The last time I checked, the Data Center Edition costs about roughly 7 times more than the Standard Edition. That's just nuts, right? This Data Center Edition provides benefits for large-scale virtualization deployments. There's obviously some features available on the Data Center Edition which are only available on the Data Center Edition. I mean, obviously, if you pay more, you get more. It's one of those old sayings in life, you get what you pay for. So some of which are SS2D, in other words, Storage Space Direct, I should say. Network Controller, SDN, and Shielded Virtual Machines. Those are only some of the extra benefits you get of Data Center Edition. One aspect I love about the Data Center Edition as compared to the Standard Edition is the fact that I can go and run unlimited virtual machine instances on the Data Center version. Now, we did mention earlier with the Standard Edition, you can run virtual machines. However, you are limited to 2 instances. So if you've got yourself a Standard license or Standard Edition license, you can only run 2 instances of virtual machines. Now, that doesn't mean I can run only 2 virtual machines, only 2 instances. You guys can go and look that up. It's not the same thing. So if I want, I can go make 4 virtual machines and only install server edition of standard on 2 of those instances. That's still 2 instances. The other 2 are basically just blank until I actually go and install something on them. So if you want more licenses, if you're running standard, you can alternatively just go and buy another license, which gives you another 2 instances. But there's going to be a certain point in time which we can refer to as a tipping point, where it might actually be cheaper just to go to the data center. Now, yes, data center is 7 times more expensive as compared to the standard edition, so it's going to take quite a lot of virtual machines to reach that tipping point. So considering, 7 times more, that means you're going to have to take 2 virtual machines, multiply 7. So that's about 14 virtual machines. So when you start getting to about 13, 14 virtual machines, at that point in time, you might as well just go get yourself a data center edition license, because then you can still run the same amount of virtual machines, actually unlimited, I should say, because data centers unlimited virtual machines. You can still run all 14 virtual machines and more, and now you've got all kinds of additional extra functionality, like the storage space direct we mentioned, network controller which we mentioned, and lastly the shielded virtual machines which we mentioned. So I would say before you go and get yourself a server edition, go look at your company's unique requirements, your unique needs, and then make your decision. So you might find that if you've got 14 virtual machines in your company or 13, you might as well just go for data center edition. You just might as well, because it's going to cost you the same, and at least then you get extra benefits out of this. Now, our last edition of server is one that you won't find on all lists, but it's still a server edition nonetheless. It's called Hyper-V Server 2019. This is a lightweight version of Windows 10 Server 2019 that is optimized to act only as a Hyper-V host. If any of you guys know Windows 10 Server, well, Hyper-V Server is very much like that. You can think of Hyper-V Server as Windows 10 Server with just a Hyper-V role and very minimal TUI. What I love about this specific edition is the fact that Microsoft allows you to use this for free. Yes, you guys heard me. Free! I don't know. For some reason, when I say free, it just makes me laugh and smile. I mean, it's amazing that Microsoft actually gives something away for free. So they provide you with an unlimited evaluation period. That's basically what it is. I wonder if someone at Microsoft is going to get fired for this. I don't know. Something you should be aware of, though, is you will still need proper licenses for the Windows versions running on top of Hyper-V Server. That is something that people sometimes tend to forget. They just hear the word free and they think, oh yeah, I'm going to get everything for free. Yeah, the main operating system being server Hyper-V, that's going to be for free, but the operating systems that you're going to be running, or those versions of Windows you're going to be running on the virtual machines, you still need a license for those. So don't forget about that. Okay, so let's move on to our second main topic for today, which is Server 2019's hard requirements. It's worth noting that the requirements I'm about to show you guys is only the minimum requirements for Server 2019, and you should definitely not be trying to run your server on these requirements. It's the minimum requirements. So if you're going to try and run it on these requirements, that's a no-no. That's asking for trouble. So in real life, the actual requirements will vary depending on job role and also vary depending on your workload. As you know, each company with their needs are unique, so what works for my company will not necessarily work for your company or the next company. Each company is unique, just like people. Generally, you guys should do your best to avoid running a server with minimum requirements. This will give you extremely poor performance and actually just cause more problems than anything. So whatever you do, try not to run a server on minimum requirements, or try and boost the RAM and the hard drive and the CPU speed as much as you possibly can. The more, the better. If you, for example, run a web server with minimum requirements or just with very low specs in general, that web server will have limited ability to manage any increases in load. So if you've got a sudden spike in load, even if it's just a little bit, it's not going to be able to cope with that load. So the web server is only going to be able to process a limited amount of traffic before experiencing any performance issues. So you're barely going to have any spike in increase in load, and then poof, server can't cope with the load. Do you want to serve that situation? I know I don't. Now, what exactly is the minimum hardware requirements for Server 2016? If you take a look here, processor architecture is 64-bit. No surprise there, it actually supports only 64-bit, and that's been the case of Server 2016 as well. Processor speed is a mere 1.4 gigahertz. RAM, 512 megabytes. Oh dear lord, that's little. And then hard drive space, only 32 gigabits. That's insane. I mean, you're going to barely be able to install Server 2019 on that, and then there's going to be no space left. You're going to maybe add one roll tops. You still need to go and install drivers. You're probably going to still need to go and add updates and all that. I think you might not even be able to add all of that. So that's the bare minimum requirements for Server 2019. So yeah. Now, in case anyone is curious about the maximum capacity of Server 2019, well, that depends on the edition you run. So I think with that being said, let's take a look at Data Center Edition being the top-notch one out of the lot. That puppy supports up to 640 logical processors, up to 4 terabytes of RAM, and up to 64 failover cluster nodes. Now, if that doesn't put a smile on any geek's face, I don't know what will. I know it isn't making me smile right now. Realistically, you're probably never going to reach that limit anytime soon, but it's still fun to know, right? Well, boys and girls, that pretty much is it for Server 2019's minimum hard requirements. There isn't really much to it, as you can see. It's pretty straightforward, like I said in the beginning. So that being said, let's move on to the third main topic, being overview of deployment options. Alright guys, now when it comes to deployment options, the ones they're talking about right now specifically is the clean, install, and upgrade. We're not talking about some sort of network deployment or imaging or any of that. That's going to be later. That's a different topic entirely. So this is basically if you were to get your hands on the good old-fashioned DVD, that's very rare. That's like chicken teeth. So if you were to get your hands on a DVD installation disk, or let's say you were to go and make a bootable flash drive or memory stick of some kind, and if you were to try and install the server operating system, or launch it from the flash drive or the DVD, what would you see? Now, the two options you would see is clean install, which is actually labeled as custom, as far as I know, and then you would see an upgrade. Those are the options you've got available. Now, when it comes to those two, let's take a look at the first one being clean install. Now, when it comes to clean install, the first thing you're going to go and do is boot the machine, or virtual machine in some cases. These days it's probably going to be a virtual machine from the Windows Server 2019 media. You'll notice they say media because it could actually be anything. Now you can see in the picture there I've got a DVD as well. It's probably not going to be a DVD. A lot of machines, desktops, laptops, servers don't even come with a DVD-ROM these days. So it's 10 to 1 gonna be a memory stick, a USB stick of some kind. So you're going to boot from your media. Second is choose the installation language. It's most likely going to be English unless you happen to be in some foreign country. Choose your time zone, choose your currency format, and keyboard layout. It's worth noting, and I know this is technically not part of this topic, be careful when you choose your language because some of these languages actually have an influence on your keyboard. For example, if you were to go and choose English United States versus English United Kingdom, very much the same, but it does influence your keyboard normally. So if you were to go and press a certain key on the keyboard of the one language versus another language, it's not going to give you the same character. Funny and strange, right? It's going to look like a driver issue or like you've got malware in your PC. Meanwhile, it's something that's very simple, like your language. Now, the third thing is choose the architecture. I think they probably meant, 64-bit or 32-bit. Obviously, it's going to be 64-bit because it only comes in 64-bit. I would say choose your edition, being standard or data center. It could potentially be Essentials version as well, or maybe Server 2019 Hyper-V. They mentioned choose with or without desktop experience. Now, many many moons ago in the past, you would have two options. One being core and one being GUI. Stands for graphical user interface. So now desktop experience is basically the GUI one, GUI, graphical user interface. If you were to go and choose the other one, it says core. That's basically going to look like command prompt. You've got no mouse cursor. It's going to be a black or a blue screen. You can only use your keyboard. So there's pros and cons to both of these, which we will all cover later on during this course. Now the fourth thing here is accept the license agreement. It's not like we really have a choice there, is it? It's like getting married. We don't know what we're getting into until it's too late. Luckily, my wife is not here to give me a slap right now. If she heard me say that, she'll probably slap the crap out of me. Fifth one being choose custom installation. So custom installation, like I said earlier, is when you want to go and do a clean install. Custom is going to allow you to go and format your hard drive, format that relevance partition, whether it be a physical hard drive or partition or a virtual one, if this is a virtual machine. Either way, potato, potato, it's going to allow you to go and do it clean. So if there happens to be anything on that hard drive, it's going to be wiped. There's going to be nothing on it. So this is a fresh, clean copy of Server 2019. You're not keeping any data if there was something on it. Next one is choose the volume that you will host the installation on. That's the actual hard drive or partition. So if you're doing this on a physical server hard drive, a physical server and a physical hard drive, that's going to be the physical hard drive you want to install this on, or the partition on that physical hard drive that you want to install this on. Partitions will be listed like hard drives. You're not really going to know whether it's a hard drive or not unless you have some weird spacing going on there. If it's a virtual machine, it's going to look exactly the same, no difference. It's just going to be a virtual machine. But that pretty much is it, guys. So just boot from the media, choose all your specs, language, currency, keyboard, choose your architecture, choose your edition. Accept the license, choose custom installation. So that second last one, it says choose custom installation. Up until that point, it's going to be the same for your upgrade. However, instead of choosing custom, you're going to go and choose upgrade. And then lastly, just go and choose the volume, obviously. Clean install means you're probably going to get yourself a new server. 10 to 1, better hardware. People and companies normally use this opportunity to get themselves new hardware and a better server and all that. I mean, why not? You're going to go through all this effort anyway. You're going to go and back up and all of that. You might as well just go get yourself new hardware while you're at it. With upgrade, you normally stay on the same server in most cases. So here we are with in-place upgrades. Now, like we said a moment ago, you're going to be staying on the same server. You're just going to be upgrading the existing operating system on that server. So this server 10 to 1 already has something on it like server 2012 or server 2016. You just want to upgrade that sucker to something like server 2019. At most, all you're going to be doing here is just choosing what you would like to keep, because you probably have existing data on it. Considering that you already have an existing operating system on it, you probably have existing data on it. So do you want to keep something? If so, the files, the applications, or nothing. That's not what's going to happen here. So the first step we're going to go and do here is insert the disk or mount the ISO image. Same as a disk, it's just a digital version of the disk, so to speak. Run the setup file. Respond to the prompt to download updates, drivers, and optional features. I can't tell you what to go and do there because it depends on your unique environment. Third being, choose the architecture. Once again, the architecture is not something you can choose, that you are stuck with 64-bit. Actually been the case since server 2016. So the only thing you're actually going to choose there is just choosing your edition. So you're probably going to go and choose Essentials, Data Center, Standard, Hyper-V versions. There's about 4 versions. I see them only mentioning 2 here. But there's actually about 4 versions. Then you're going to have to go and choose once again whether you want desktop experience or server core. Desktop experience being the GUI version, the graphical version. And core version being the one that's got limited features. That one is going to give you a bare server environment, which gives you a lot smaller attack surface for hackers to go and attack. So there's pros and cons, but we will get to that later on at some point. The fourth thing, once again, you're going to be setting the license agreement. Not much of a choice. Choose what you would like to keep, like I said. So do you want to keep the files, the apps, or nothing? And that, my dear boys and girls, actually is the deployment options. There really is nothing much more to it. It's either a matter of choosing the clean install or choosing any upgrade option, and that is that. Clean install is going to be just that. It's going to be clean. You're going to have absolutely nothing on that machine. Clean install in the past would normally allow you to go and choose an architecture. With upgrade, you have to stay within the same architecture. So if you would like to go and upgrade an existing server, let's say this is something older than server 2016, then there is the possibility that you could possibly be running 32-bit version. You cannot upgrade from 32-bit architecture to 64-bit. You can only upgrade from 32-bit to 32-bit and from 64-bit to 64-bit. So I wouldn't worry about it if you're running server 2016, because server 2016 only has a 64-bit version. But if you're running something like server 2012 or older, there is a chance you could have a 32-bit version. Then you need to go and check out first what version or what architecture you're running first. Are you running 32-bit or 64-bit? If you're running 64-bit, you can go and upgrade. If you're running 32-bit, you're going to have to go and do a clean install. And if you'd like to keep your files and applications, you're going to have to go and do a good old-fashioned backup. Now, the next topic here is our fourth one for today, deployment accelerators. This is to make your life easier and quicker when it comes to deployment. Now, the tool we're going to be taking a look at today is MDT, Microsoft's Deployment Toolkit. Now, this is a unified collection of tools, processes, and guidance for automating desktop and server deployment. You can use it to create reference images or as a complete deployment solution. MDT is one of the most important tools available to IT professionals today. Now, I'm sure that's what Microsoft would like us to believe. I do not fully agree with that statement, because I've seen the majority of my clients that I've dealt with do not actually use the MDT tool, I should say. They use third-party tools, of which I'm not going to mention any names right now. I'm not saying MDT is bad. It's just it might not be suited for everybody's unique needs and requirements. So MDT might work great for my company, but for the next company, it might not be best suited. Maybe they are going to have to go and look at a different tool, for their specific needs. Alright, so some details about MDT. It's a lightweight tool for automated server and desktop deployments, deploys standardized images, automates the deployment process by configuring unattended setup files, and then lastly complements Windows deployment services and System Center Configuration Manager, in other words SCCM for short. Now with this tool, in addition to reducing deployment time and standardizing desktop and server images, MDT enables you to more easily manage security and ongoing configurations. MDT builds on top of the core deployment tools in Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, which some of you might know as Windows ADK for short. In case any of you guys are by any chance wondering where you actually get this tool, because maybe by now you've tried running a search for it and you just can't seem to find it, well, it's not on the operating system by default. You're gonna have to go and download this bad boy. So it's about 20 megabytes in file size, in case you guys were wondering about the size as well. It's relatively very small. So just go and download it, run the little wizard, and be on your way. Alrighty, boys and girls, that pretty much is it for deployment accelerators, just the one we're going to be mentioning today. On to our next main topic today, being servicing channels for Windows Server. Alright guys, you can use servicing channels to choose whether new features and functionality will be delivered regularly during a server's production lifespan, or when to move to a new server version. There are currently two release channels, the first of which is long-term servicing channel. Now, with this option, a major version of Windows Server will be released every 2 or 3 years. And normal security updates and Windows updates will be delivered on a regular basis. Pretty nifty, right? Now, this is actually the default one which you're going to get with new server installations, but we'll get to that in a moment. The second option is semi-annual channel. With this one, new features will be delivered semi-annually in the spring and in the fall. Now, depending on when spring and fall is, that depends probably on whether you're on the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. With regards to normal security updates in Windows, these will be delivered on a regular basis. And then something interesting about these semi-annual releases is they can actually be identified by their version. The version is usually a combo of the year and the month which the feature was released in, just in case you guys didn't know that. Just felt I should add that there for you guys. It's worth noting that a typical installation of Windows Server uses the long-term servicing channel, like I said earlier. So if you go do a typical installation, you're going to by default get the long-term servicing channel. It provides the ability for extended periods of time and allows organizations to decide when it wants to move up to use the new features. So it gives you more control, basically. It's also important to note that the semi-annual channel is only released as server core and nano server container images, and only available to software assurance and cloud customers. And then lastly, guys, the semi-annual channel uses the same model as Windows 10. So that's pretty much the servicing channels in a nutshell, people. Not really much to it. Pretty much just two, long-term servicing channel and semi-annual servicing channel. So I believe we can move on to our next main topic today, being licensing and activation models for Windows Server. Okie dokie guys, so first things first, licensing for Windows Server Standard and Data Center is based on the number of cores, not processors. So there's quite a misconception about that. A lot of people think it's based on the amount of processors you've got in your server, and it's actually not the case. It's based on the number of cores you've got. Go figure, right? Now when it comes to the minimum requirements for Windows Server, it has the following. All physical cores must be licensed. Sorry, I can't say that with a straight face. It's just, yeah, it really feels like Microsoft's trying to make a quick buck around every corner. I mean, everything they can ask you a license for, they will ask you a license for. So, which is why I was laughing earlier when they said something is actually available for free. It's because Microsoft is known, to go and charge you money for almost everything they can charge you money for. And the second requirement here is there must be 8 core licenses per processor. The third being there must be 16 core licenses per server. Now something else which is pretty important is client access licenses. We just know them as CALs. So client access licenses are required for each user or device that connects to the server for any purpose. Now I should probably mention at this point in time, you are not going to be assigning these licenses to these people. You just need to have that license to be able to have these people connect with their device and whatnot. It's kind of like having a driver's license. Do you use your driver's license to drive? No, you use the car to go and drive. You just need to have that license somewhere on hand, in case someone asks for it, like a traffic officer. So yeah, the same can be said about these CALs. You basically just need to have it on hand. So if you've got 100 computers in your environment, or I should say devices, you need to have 100 CALs on the server. So basically, if someone comes and check, being the Microsoft police, for the lack of a better description, then you need to be able to show that you've got 100 CALs, for these 100 devices actually connecting to the server environment. Okay, and then a little bit more. To ensure that your organization has proper licenses and to receive notices for product updates, you must activate every copy of Windows Server that you install. Otherwise, the Microsoft police is going to come and take your cookies. I've been known to exaggerate, by the way, guys. So you can go and activate this via two ways, normally via manual activation or automatic. Now, in bigger companies, it's usually better to go and do it automatically. I think you're almost always going to go and do it automatically. It's very rarely you're going to find yourself doing this manually unless it's a very small company or literally just one server, perhaps. Okay, so let's take a look at the activation methods, which I accidentally already mentioned to you guys. The first of which is manual activation, which requires a product key. I think that explains itself. The second being automatic activation. Now, with automatic activation, there's actually quite a bunch of options. I'm going to give you guys six. So the first is Key Management Service, or KMS for short. That's normally what we call it in IT. We just call it KMS. The second one is, or the second method I should say, is Volume Activation Services Server Role. You can go do it via that method. Third option is Active Directory based activation. Fourth method to go and activate your servers is Volume Activation Management Tool. Second last one, Multiple Activation Key. And then the very last one of the lot today is Automatic Virtual Machine Activation. So there you guys have it. That is pretty much everything we need to say regarding licensing and activation models for Windows Server. On to our next topic for today, being what is new in Server 2019. Now, I'm not going to go and tell you about everything that is new in Server 2019 because that's just going to take too long. So I'm strictly going to keep it to what is actually included in the Server 2019 course. In case someone needs to go and write the exam or anything like that, at least you will have peace of mind because I've covered everything that you need to know for the specific exam, being the WS-011. So, what is new in Windows Server 2019? Well, way too much to mention, but one of the main things is it's designed to easily link your on-premises infrastructure to Microsoft Azure. Or let's just say designed to link yourself to the cloud. Now, Windows 10 is actually the same situation, which is obviously the equivalent of Server 2019. They specifically say Windows 10 is designed for cloud. I mean, you've got OneDrive in there, you've got the ability to go and join the Azure domain, and the same can be said about Server 2019, if not more, probably more. So it's designed to go and link your stuff to the cloud. Now, Windows Server 2019 has got a lot of new features. We're not going to go and cover them all today because of the time constraints. Somewhere along the line, we will cover them at some point in this course. So the ones we're going to have a look at right now are the following new features. The first feature is something we actually already explained in this course, and it's called Windows Admin Center. So if you've been watching the previous topics in this series, you would already have a fair idea of what this actually is. But nonetheless, it manages Windows servers, clusters, hyperconverged infrastructure, as well as Windows 10 PCs. The second feature which is new is deduplication of REFS volumes. So now in Server 2019, it fully supports deduplication of REFS file system. This was partly supported in 2016, but now it's fully supported, as you can see. The third new feature is cluster sets. This allows you to create large scale-out clusters. And then we have Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection and Windows Defender Exploit Guard, a new set of host intrusion prevention such as attack detection and zero-day exploits. So this was previously available on Windows 10 platforms, but now it's also on Server 2019, which just makes sense if you think about it, because 2019 server is basically the equivalent of Windows 10. Windows Defender itself is not something new. I mean, that's been around on Windows for, I don't know, for years, for many years. But on Windows 10 now, and also now on Server 2019, it's a full-blown antivirus. It's a threat protection, it's the exploit guard, and a whole bunch of other things. Then the second last one here is server core app compatibility. It's an optional feature in case you guys don't know. So it improves app compatibility of Windows Server Core by including a subset of binaries and packages from the Windows Server with desktop experience. Or for those of you that's old school, GUI. Our last new feature on the list is shielded virtual machines for Linux. Now, the shielded virtual machines itself, I don't think is something new. I do believe that actually came out on Server 2016. I stand to be corrected. I'm not exactly sure which version it was. I think it was Server 2016. However, on Server 2016, it only supported Windows virtual machines. Now, it supports Linux virtual machines. So this protects Linux virtual machines from attacks and rogue administrators and all that. It basically goes and uses a it's kind of like BitLocker, you know. It uses a part of BitLocker to actually go and encrypt these virtual machines to a certain extent. But I'm getting sidetracked here now. So I wouldn't say the shielded virtual machine concept itself is new because, well, like I just said, I think it was added in Server 2016. I think now Microsoft has simply just extended this even further, by adding Linux to the pool. So I, for one, like the shielded virtual machines benefit, but what I don't like about the shielded virtual machines benefit is it's unfortunately only available on Data Center edition of server. So if you guys have watched the beginning of this video, you would know shielded virtual machines is only available on data centers. If you've got something like standard, guess what? You don't have it. Well, folks, it's that time of the video where I'm gonna say I love you and leave you. So please give this video a like. I do put a lot of effort into it. If you're new to my channel, subscribe and join the family. At least then you'll know when I upload new lessons, or for all you know, a whole new training series. I'll see you guys next time on the next training lesson. Bye, guys.
If you love me, let me know. If you don't, then let me